And I don't nobody get disappointed with me, but the real meat of what I want to share with you is sort of yet to come in this series. What I've got for you today, it was too much to add to another part of it, really. So it's really just some groundwork. But, you know, favor is something, when I think about favor is really sort of a mysterious thing. You know, it's mysterious to like walk in favor. We don't really know what it is. You know what I'm saying? You can't put your finger on what favor is. And I will say this, people who live in favor, they love favor, whoever it is, you know. Some of you might think that you're the favorite child in your family, or maybe you have a favorite child in your family. And if you walk in favor, you love it. You know, we love to walk in that favor, but if you don't walk in favor, then you envy those who do walk in favor, you know. And that's just part of life. It's part of our life that we do that. And so, as hard as it is to define, and even harder to understand, what we're going to do is we're going to take a few weeks. You know, I used to say the next 2 or 3 weeks, but I don't ever know how long these things are going to go. So when I get finished with it, I'll get finished. I got a Christmas series I'm working in the work, so I'll finish this before Christmas because I'm not working on that and not preaching it. So, or even holding it to next year. So anyway, I want you to look in your Bible. We're going to look in Genesis chapter 37. I want to talk a little bit about favor. And I titled this Wear the Coat, and I'm going to get into a little bit more about what I mean by that, this series, more in the coming weeks. But what I want you to understand about favor is this. You know, in the kingdom, I'm just going to tell you the truth. I've been in church my whole life, and in the kingdom, we have seen a lot of people over the years that abuse the notion of favor. And they misuse the idea of favor for personal gain. You know what I'm saying? And that's not what favor is really about. The favor of God, the favor of the Father in my life, it's not for personal gain. I am supposed to be a vessel. That's what I was created to be. That's what you were created to be. We're supposed to be a vessel that we're filled up and then we pour out. And we're filled up and then we pour out. And then we're filled up again, then we pour out. Filled up again, we pour out again. You know, I was reading the All In book that we do on Wednesday nights. And I think I read one of my most favorite quotes that I've ever read in my whole life is this. It said, you know, the favor of God, when the favor of God and the blessing of God comes into your life, it shouldn't raise your standard of living. It should raise your standard of giving. How powerful is that? But we don't get that, you see, because a lot of us, we have taken advantage of even the notion of favor in our lives. And so we've said, well, if God has favor on me, he must want me to have a nicer this or a bigger that or a fancier, shinier this. That's not what favor is. But so we're going to get into favor and the favor of a father and the favor of God. I want you to look at Genesis chapter 37. We're going to look at verses 3 and 4. Really common story. And I'm going to read, we're going to read some more scripture today before we go. But it said, now Israel loved Joseph more than all of his children because he was the son of his old age. Also, he made him a tunic of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him, and they could not speak peaceably to him. Now, this is just really probably one of the most common stories. I'm going to stop right there for now. One of the most common stories in the Bible. And to really tell you the truth, even though the coat, the tunic, that it calls it a tunic in this script, in this passage, but even though that's really mentioned very little, if you really read through the story, the actual coat of many colors, because, you know, we've heard the story, coat of many colors. Listen, I used to love, I know it's not about Joseph and his family, but I used to love listening to Dolly Parton sing Coat of Many Colors. Every now and then it'd come on that classic country station, and I'm just in heaven for a little bit. Y'all, you don't have to like Dolly Parton. I like Dolly Parton singing. It's pretty to me. But it's mentioned very little, and we usually describe the entire account of Joseph's life by saying the story of Joseph and the coat of many colors. Have you noticed that? I know I grew up in kids' church learning it all. You know, they wrote a Broadway play about it. And we usually describe his entire life by saying Joseph and the coat of many colors. So why is it? Why would you think that happens? You know why? Because it's important. It's like that because it's important. The coat of many colors, the tunic of many colors, it wasn't just like a coat. It wasn't like his daddy said, here, Joseph, here's a coat for you that's nicer than the coat that I got for your brothers. It wasn't about that. It wasn't about the many colors. It wasn't about the coat. It wasn't about the actual garment. It never was. It was about the Father's favor. It was about the favor of the Father to the Son. And so it was a symbol of his Father's favor in his life. That coat of many colors, it represented everything good that his Father ever felt toward him. That's what favor does. What favor does in my life, it represents everything good that my Father ever felt toward me. It represents everything wonderful that my Father ever had in his mind toward me. That's what favor does. But it doesn't only do that. Did you read back later on when their brothers saw that their father loved him more, they hated him and could not speak well of him? It was also a symbol to his brothers. It symbolized favor to them as well. But not their favor. That favor rested on somebody else. And so this is the path really that all of us are on. It wasn't really anything that Joseph did wrong. And I want you to think about this. And a lot of us are maybe in this in a season right now where some of this may be happening. Wasn't really anything that Joseph did wrong that brought on the ire of his brothers, made them not like him. It was just that he had the favor of the Father. He had the favor of the Father on him, and that made a huge difference. I'm going to get into read some more in just a minute, but I want to get into something right now that I feel like God's putting in my spirit. Does anybody know, it says now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children? Does anybody realize that this coat of many colors that Joseph got that symbolizes the favor of his Father on him? And all of these years, we wouldn't be where we are today. All of these years of Christian history that we have because of Israel and because of his sons, all of these years of Christian history that we have, do you know where that came from? That came from a boy who lied. It came from a boy who swindled his brother out of a pot of stew and then went and lied to his daddy so that he could get a blessing. Are you hearing what I'm telling you? And that's where this comes from. But in our lives, what do we do though? We say, oh, no. Whatever it is, I'm a product of this, or I'm a product of that, or I'm a product of this, I'm a product of that. I'm a product of what people said about me. I'm a product of a bad home. I'm a product of this. Everything in our lives, we say, I'm not going to be able to make this. I'm not going to be able to do this. I can't live this because look at me. You know how many times I hear in a week, well, I just don't know that much about the Bible. I don't feel like I can do this because I don't know that much. Read it. Listen to it. But what God is trying to say to you today is you're not a product of anything except what he says about you. That's what you're a product of. If you choose to be a product of the Father's favor, you get to be a product of the Father's favor. Joseph walked in favor, and I realize we're talking about his earthly father, but in a little while we're going to be talking about his heavenly Father, which is much more important. Joseph walked in the favor of the Father, and he was the son of a deceiver and a liar who stole a blessing from his older brother. Anybody remember that story? Because you think about it, Esau had to say, no, he seriously isn't really going to take my birthright over this stew. Oh, yes, he did. Yes, he did. And you know what? You know where Joseph's daddy came from? Joseph's daddy, who was a liar and a conniver, a deceiver, you know where he came from? He came from a mama who was a liar and a conniver and a deceiver. Anybody ever read the story? No, we don't read it like that. We read it like, oh, bless the Lord, somebody give out a message in tongues. No, that's the truth of the matter is this. Joseph's mama, Israel's mama, back when his name was Jacob, Israel's mama was a liar and a con and a deceiver, and she wanted him to get the blessing. She didn't want Esau to get the blessing, so she turned him into a liar and a con and a deceiver. And so he went in and he got the blessing. And you know what? The favor of the Father rested on him. And we think, oh my God, look at me. Look how terrible I am. Look at the life that I live. Look what kind of person I am. We live our entire Christian existence because of the way that God set things up that came through a liar and a deceiver. And you know what? That's who we are today. We live how we are today because a liar and a deceiver did what he did and got that blessing. Because once the blessing's given, it can't be taken back. And once the favor's put on, it can't be taken back. But what we do is we take on the name of our fathers. We take on the name of our father's liar. We take on the name of our father's deceiver. We take on on the name of our father's addict. We take on the name of our father's this, that, and the other. And we've got to understand, that's not my name, and that's not who I am. People don't get to say, but the problem is what we do is it's almost like we've got one of those big sticky pages of those labels that say, hello, my name is, and everybody that comes into our life, we let them write whatever it is they want to write and stick it on us, and we walk around with it like it's true, and that's not who you are. They don't get to say. People don't get to say. You know, I've heard in my life, hey, look, I can talk about me. I've heard all kinds of things about me. And you know what? Sometimes it hurts. Sometimes it's kind of funny. More often than not, it really hurts, you know, for somebody to say things like that, you know, ugly things about you. Because really the truth of the matter is, sometimes they're true. But you know what I say? They don't get to say. They don't get to say. We want to defend it, though. No. They don't get to say. They don't get to say. I put this in here in bold letters, and I'm talking about in the flesh, okay? I'm not talking in the spirit. But favor plus a dream in the flesh equals chaos. Come on, y'all. We want to be like, oh, God gave me a dream, and God gave me favor, and so now I'm floating on a magic carpet all the way to the end of it. It just ain't going to be like that. I'm not probably the best preacher in the world, but one thing I won't preach to you is that everything's going to come up roses and daisies and everything's wonderful. Now you know Jesus and everything's beautiful. No, you'll fight through sometimes. A lot of times you'll fight through. And especially if you got favor on you and you got God's dream in you, people ain't going to like it. I want you to look at 37. I'm going to start in verse 5 this time. It says, now Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So he said to them, please hear this dream which I have dreamed. It's just hilarious to me. They hated him even more. There we were, binding sheaves in the field, and then behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright, and indeed your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf. And his brothers said to him, shall you indeed reign over us? Or shall you indeed have dominion over us? So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. They hated him because he even had the dream, and then they hated him on top of that because he told them about it. You ever done that? Somebody say they had a bad dream about you? Just don't. Do not. Just don't. Because I don't know. Everybody asks me all the time, does this dream mean something? I don't know. I really don't know, because I've had some crazy dreams in my life, and if they meant something, I'm in bad trouble, really. If all these crazy dreams that I have, because sometimes, they make those, now you can get those cheddar poppers from TGI Fridays frozen at the grocery store. Sometimes I eat those at like 11 o'clock. And so if any of these dreams that I'm having are like really mean something, I'm done. My life is really over in every sense of the word. But he had the dream, and then he told him. So the first thing that I want you to notice is this. He didn't do anything to bring any of this on him. The favor came from the Father. Hello? And the dream came from God. It wasn't Joseph's favor, and it wasn't Joseph's dream. And this is what we do because we live in America. We want a white picket fence and 2.5 kids or whatever all that is. And so what we do is we muster up a dream. And we expect the God of this universe to come and be a part of our dream. That's not how it works. God says to you, just like he says to Joseph, I've got a dream for you. I've already got it planned out for you. And if you will just join me where I'm already working, I'm already doing things. I've been operating in your life since before you were even born. And if you'll just get on board and join me, you'll see things you never thought you would see before. You'll do things that you never thought you would do before. And they're different than you thought they would be. Ever since I've been a Christian, but really probably just the last handful of years, I've noticed that when I'm trying, and it takes effort, it just doesn't float by. When I'm trying to walk in the dream that I know God has for me, according to the scriptures, according to the things that God spoke to me, it's hard sometimes and it's awkward sometimes, but it really doesn't build me up in this carnal world. But when you operate in it, there's just something inside you that comes alive. When you operate in the things of God, something inside you just wakes up, and something inside you comes alive, and you really feel like you're living, and you really know that you're living because you're operating in this dream that God gave you. His father gave him the favor. His brothers didn't hate the daddy for it. They hated him for it. And you know what? When the father gives you favor, the people around you, they ain't going to hate daddy for it. They're going to hate you for it. Because it doesn't make sense to them. It doesn't make sense. That's the funny thing is we always say, well, this is how they did it back in Hebrew culture, back in the old days. And then we find story after story after story after story after story in the Old Testament of how they said, no, we're not going to do it like that. You know? Because if you think about it, he shouldn't have had the favor of the father. It should have been the oldest. The oldest should have been the most favorable. And so the oldest male, really, if you want to get all Old Testament, don't none of y'all liberals get mad at me. That's old. I didn't write that, okay? It had to be the oldest male child that had the favor on him of the daddy. But so this is all backwards. It didn't make sense to them. And so when a carnal man operates in the dream of a holy God, people get upset. Because it doesn't make sense to them. And the thing, I preach this kind of stuff to you all the time, just because I want you to get ready. We say, oh God, I got on my knees and I searched you out and I really feel like you spoke to me what I'm supposed to do. I started doing these things that you told me to do, and people started just falling away from me and running away from me and leaving me behind. What in the world? And God says, that's what happens. That's what happens. And the funny thing is, what we do is we find some little, smart mouth to post on Facebook about them, the people that are in your life that won't jump over a puddle for you or whatever. The truth of the matter is, God says we love them just the same as we would love them if they would have stuck by our side. Love them just the same as we would have loved them if they would have done everything that they could to promote God's dream in us. Love them just the same. Just the same. Because we've all been done wrong in here. And so what we do is we fight over who's been done the most wrong. You ever done that with your spouse? Have you ever been sick and your spouse is sick at the same time and you have like 7 kids? And so you start fighting over who's sicker because the baby's crying? Oh, come on, y'all. I'm preaching where you living now. Start fighting. Oh, no, look, my head is killing me. I don't know. It's like, well, I'm running a fever. Well, I've been up all night long sick. Well, I was folding clothes and washing dishes sick. And that's what we do. It doesn't make sense to this world when somebody walks in favor. And it won't. It never will. It'll never make sense to people. They won't understand it. Do you remember the story in the Bible where the guy said, I'm going to give you this much wages? And they went out there in the field and they started working. And then some people came in the middle of the day and they started working. And then some people came at the end of the day and they worked and they all got the same wage. And then the people in the morning got ticked off. I've been out here working all day long. They didn't say Lord, but come on, that's what parables are about, y'all. I've been out working all day long. This guy worked like 10 minutes. You gave him the same as you gave me. I don't get it. And Jesus didn't say it like this. I'm going to paraphrase, and don't nobody tell anybody I'm a heretic. Jesus said it ain't about you. It's not about you. Didn't we make an agreement that that's what you get? Oh, yeah. Well, then you got it. My agreement with you wasn't the same agreement that I had with them. And it ain't none of your business whose agreement I got with who and when and how. And we don't like that. Because we're I tell my wife all the time she's the fair police. And I don't mean like the county fair. I mean like the fair, like that's unfair. We'll be driving through the parking lot at Walmart or any store really. We'll be driving through and you know how cars do. They'll just cut across, They have those lanes with the arrows and everything. But people are still just like, no. And they just like, you know how they do. They go wild. And they just cut across and she'll go, oh my word, whose fault would that have been? I'm like, bro, it really doesn't matter whose fault it would have been if they would have hit us. What difference does it make? But we want fair, and so we don't understand favor, and we never will. And a lot of times we want me, my, and so we don't understand favor, because if we get any favor into our own lives and then we see it dwindle away, what we need to understand is we just hoarded it up. We hoarded up the favor of God and the things that came into our lives because of the favor of God. This is the last scripture I want to read. I know I got like 5 minutes, and y'all are getting antsy. Genesis 37, 9 through 11, right after that says, then he dreamed still another dream. And I want to stop right there. This cat had some guts, because my thing is, After that first dream, everybody got mad at me and hated my guts. I just wouldn't have told nobody about the second dream. You know how that is? I'm not even going to say. Because you know how it is when you're in a relationship with somebody. I know I use my family all the time, but you know how it is. Those of you husbands that are married, you know. No, I told her once before. I'm not telling her this time. Come on, y'all. Because you just I want peace in my life for today. So if I was him, I said, no, I ain't telling this dream. But said he dreamed still another dream and told it to his brothers. Why in the world? Look, I have dreamed another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and the 11 stars, that's how many brothers he had, bowed down to me. So he told it to his father and his brothers. And his father rebuked him and said to him, what is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall your mother and I and all your brothers indeed come to bow down to the earth before you? And his brother, and this is my favorite part, and his brothers envied him, but his father kept the matter in mind. Now, we have the same scenario, but it's played out in different company now. And by that, what I mean is we got the brothers who hate Joseph. And I want you to understand, these are things that, I'm not teaching you about Joseph. I'm teaching you about you. I'm teaching you about me. All right? We got the brothers, the people around that hate Joseph. They're there. They're listening to the dream. But then we got the daddy who's got favor on Joseph. He's there. He's listening to the dream. So remember, he had favor with his daddy. He didn't have favor with his brothers. Everybody else was mad. His daddy got a little bit mad too. But you know what? This is what happens when there's favor. His daddy thought, you know what? Maybe I'm mad about it. Maybe I'm aggravated about it. But his daddy thought this is doable. This is possible. That's what happens when you have favor with somebody. They don't think, no, you're the youngest. What in the world? All you've got really to your name is a coat. You know, that daddy gave you. And everybody just always pampers you. You know how that is? We got, in my family, we had, my immediate family, there were 3 of us. And you know how it is. Every now and then when we were growing up, one of us is always arguing about whichever other one's getting special treatment, you know? And that's all Joseph ever had was special treatment. They gave him the fancy little coat. He don't got nothing. And then the daddy who showed him the favor, who gave him the coat and said, you're my favorite, look right here in the face of all your brothers, you're my favorite. Then Joseph goes to him and says, by the way, you're going to bow down to me too if this dream comes true. And his daddy goes, wait, no. He rebuked him. What is this you come to say to me, that your mother and me and all your brothers going to bow down? But you know what? After that, you know what happens when you got favor with somebody? It says his father kept the matter in mind. His father believed that it was possible. It believed that this great dream was possible. And so this is what I'm going to do. If you guys want to come play, I'm not going to end this lengthy. I know that God moved a lot in the beginning of the service, but this is what I want to do. I want you, if you will, to get into Genesis chapter 37. Just read this story. Well, it ain't just there, but read this story. And over the coming weeks, what we're going to be talking about is sort of the pathway of favor and the road that you take when favor is on you. And sometimes, whether the physical coat is on you or not, or whether people can actually see those bright, brilliant, shining many colors on you or not, you got to wear it anyway. You got to walk in that favor anyway. You know what? Because a lot of things happened to Joseph. Over time, a lot of things happened to him, and we're going to get into all that. I act like I don't want to spoil it or nothing, like everybody doesn't know the story. But a lot of things happened to him over time. But the truth of the matter is, it is up to him. It's up to him to say whether or not he's going to walk in favor. It's up to him to say whether or not he's going to wear that coat. Because there's going to be plenty of things to come your way to say, no, no, no. Because circumstances, they say God's a lie. Men, they say God's a lie. You hear what I'm telling you? Because we say, oh God, I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and everything still fell apart. But God's trying to tell us from the beginning, you don't get to say. You don't get to say what's falling apart and what's staying together. You don't get to define it. But what we do is we define the answer to the prayer, right? Come on, y'all might as well tell the truth. I do. We define the answer to the prayer before we even pray it. And so when it doesn't happen like that, we say, where are you, God? Come on. I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. I'm supposed to walk in favor. Look at this coat. Where are you? Because that's what we think. And so sometimes we just have to, when I say sometimes, I mean several times a day. We just have to take ourselves and the way that we think and the things that we want, and we just have to push them to the back. And then you know what they're going to do? They're going to rise back up again, and you just push them back down again. They're going to rise back up again, and you just push them back down again, back up again, and push them back down again. And you know, it's not understandable. Again, it doesn't make sense, because people say, well, why would I want to follow a Jesus that says take all the things that I want and all my dreams and push them down? You don't get to know why until you follow him. And then you know why. You know why. Because there's bigger, and there's better, and there's more beautiful, and there's greater things in this world than the things that we're running after. So some of us we feel like our coat's been stolen. Some of us gave it away. Some of us did what I probably would have wanted to do. I just want to I'm a peacemaker. Really, I am. I want to keep the water still. And so, you didn't notice this year, I just had to pray and say, Lord, I'm putting it in your hands. And I didn't say nothing about college football all year. Because I just be joking around, but I get in a lot of trouble. I don't really care. Because there's going to come a day when there's a big white throne, and when I look up there won't be a bulldog or a rebel or any of those things sitting up there. I just blew some of y'all's mind. What? You just like stomped the bar down. But I'm a peacemaker. And so some of us, we feel like our coat's been stolen. Some of us, we gave it away. Some of us, you might have done like me. You just didn't want to stir the waters, and so you just hid it away. You know? I've done that. You just hid it away. You hid that favor away because you don't want to cause trouble. You don't want there to be problems. But I'm telling you this, anywhere Jesus went and anywhere anybody who was anointed of Jesus went, there was trouble, trouble, trouble all around. Are you hearing what I'm telling you? Remember when he went to the temple, everything turned upside down. And that's the temple. We say, well, you know what? I'm going to honor the house of God. You know what I say? The best way for you to honor the house of God is to just love everybody who comes in it. I don't really care what you wear or how fancy you talk. Honor the house of God by loving every single person that walks in the door of the house of God, and then loving them outside the house of God. Because there's a lot of different things. You guys, if you'll just stand with me, there's a lot of different things that we could define ourselves by. Got a lot of problems in my life. You got a lot of problems in your life. It's just a few days. So what's today? The 10th? 4 days. It'll be 15 years since really I made probably the second best decision I ever made. Now there's been times where it seemed like the number one worst decision I ever made. But I married Brooke right here. Right here. I mean, like in this spot. I married my wife 15 years ago. And so I say, thank God, I made some good decisions. Because we got all these beautiful kids. Somebody asked her the other day, how do you keep up with laundry? We don't. I mean, that's how. You just survive sometimes. All these beautiful kids later and this life together later. I made some good decisions in my life. I made some really bad decisions in my life. There are people in my life that I've had to call on the phone. There are people in my life that God's put in my heart to wait until I see them face to face, which has got to be His promise that I'm going to say things that I should have said that I didn't say. Take back things that I did say and I shouldn't have said. Or just to apologize. Because in America here, in this human body too, we have been driven to the false notion that we have to be at fault, be the one to apologize. Oh, come on, y'all. You're right, you do. No, that's actually not right. And so what God's saying to you right now is, you got to wear the coat. You got to get all these things that are trying to hide it, trying to take it away, all these things that have stolen it, all these things that you've given it to, and you've got to walk in it. Just walk in it, regardless of anything. Regardless of anything, just walk in it. Because everything around you is going to tell you, no. That's what this world does. And so when I pray, do you know what I say? I've said it from this pulpit thousands of times. When I pray, I say, God, regardless of what I see with my eyes, regardless of what I hear with my ears, regardless of what I can touch with my own hands, even if it is absolutely opposite of what you said, I believe what I believe what you said. I believe what you said. So I want everybody to just bow your head with me. I know we prayed at the beginning, but I like to do this.